Good morning, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate the news essential, important, and optional, saving you time in your busy day and pointing you to very cool trends in this very fast-moving domain of AI news, or AI happenings, rather. So here we have John, Tim, Ankaj, and Adam today. Hi, everyone. And we have a set of really interesting articles, a couple of research articles, one or two use cases, and some announcements. So let's get started. Let's do the first one, Ankaj.
Good. Thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Google DeepMind, and it talks about Genie 2, which is their large-scale foundation world model.
It's for physical robots, really, the creating of the environments. What do you think about this, Adam?
You know, we've seen a lot of things lately that were on the edge of this, but this is really fully baked, I'd say. And so I'm giving it an important this time to go from text to not effectively a skybox with a depth map so you can walk around a little bit, but the extent to which this is generating full environments. I'd imagine under the hood, this is actually what Sora is doing. Although we still haven't seen it yet from OpenAI, and it's the direction these are going. NVIDIA is very heavy into it as well, as you alluded, because the intention is really so that then we can rapidly train models on, train robotics on the world, because we have these world models that we can generate and simulate for them to navigate. Some of the additional features and capabilities that are built into this, as you look deeper into it, and the ways it can just really make not only the world, but the objects within it and the logical interactions in between them. It's time to, I think, flag an important on this trend and make sure people are paying attention.
What do you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. This one is over the top good. And the ability to retain all the detailed features from a trivial input, when you think about it, either a single image or a prompt, and generate these very rich worlds that they then manipulate through. So they're really moving through them. And designing it as a training environment is really interesting. So yeah, I think this is a next step forward. So for people not in games and video, I still think I agree it's important just to be aware of how fast this space is moving, because you may not have video now, but you may be almost forced, I would say, to use video soon. I remember when, when Visual Basic came out and most of the enterprise world was still doing IBM mainframe with green screen terminals. And I kept telling people, it doesn't matter that your green screen terminal is a little better because everybody else is doing Visual Basic on PCs, and that's your comparison. So if competitors start using this stuff to really deepen their interfaces, you better pay attention.
Yeah, I was thinking that same with Ashish, that this is for the environments where you use robots currently. You can actually accelerate the training of the robots in the production environments, in the home environments and the like. So I think it is important for that reason, and in addition to what you said, Tim and Adam. So I'm okay with important. John, Paul.
Yeah, I might. Let me make. I started at important. Let me make the case for essential. I'm not sure I'm fully there. A lot of the challenges in creating artificial general intelligence have to do with contextual knowledge, and there's a line in this article that talks about how it can help with AGI. I think this is incredibly powerful in terms of being able to sample reality, then generate realities off that, and then create a training environment to learn within those realities. So I wouldn't be surprised if this I mean, you think about where's this going to get adopted? No question in military applications, no question in gaming, right? And I think it's actually going to drive forward a bunch of complex semantic augmentation of any kind of agents. So I don't know. I might even make it essential, but certainly important.
Okay, Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good discussion. I as important here. I think this thing's also really good at helping the AI leader understand. At the end of the day, this stuff's all just bits, and it's being manipulated incredibly fast in different ways. And visually, it's just very viscerally impactful when we see it on video.
Yeah.
It's important.
Okay, important it is. Let's go to the next one.
The next one is a research paper titled Data Lab, a unified platform for LLM-powered business intelligence.
Oh, very, very deep and interesting paper. Okay, Tim, what did you think about it? And yeah, if you and Kash can scroll down to the schematic, yeah.
It's a really interesting paper. I am on the borderline of important, even though my hard grading wants me to say a little bit optional because it's a research paper. But there are a couple of things that are really important here, I think. And it may be a little too technical. You can guide me because I'm still a little bit of a propeller head myself. The use of multiple...
Tim, that's why I love you, man. You know, your propeller is like no dust on it, totally ready to go. I love it.
I never stopped.
Thank you. But anyway, so they built an end-to-end system here, a workflow system, rather than just an LLM. So it's amazing how far you can get just saying, hey, I'd like to see this table pivoted here and visualized like this, or generate me a Tableau script that'll do the right thing. That's very powerful, but it is very point-based. And most BI involves data cleaning, understanding what data you need to get at, tying it all together, and then doing the visualization. So there is a lot of back and forth in complex data analysis. And this tackles the whole thing stem to stern. So that's one important thing, is that this is a workflow, not just a particular point piece of technology, and appears to perform quite well. That's the hard part, again, is to understand how well it really performs in practice. And that's why part of me says, well, maybe we need some more evidence in the real world. But this is Tencent, and they tried it on their own data, and it did pretty well. So there you go. And Michael saying orchestration. Yeah, this is really good orchestration over a complex process that's pretty repeatable. The other thing that's important here, and similar to a certain extent to what we just saw, is they're using LLMs to generate knowledge graphs. And it takes me all the way back to my object-oriented database days with directed acyclic graphs. But what they're doing is reading all of the information to generate a knowledge base, and then they're also reading what particular piece parts of a given workflow they need so that they can optimize the actual running and execution of it to keep the latency down. And both of those are not LLM things, they're knowledge-based things. So, but they're generated through LLMs. So this to me is the holy grail at one level. If you can use the LLM to generate real-world, actual deterministic knowledge graphs, then use that to reflect back to the LLMs as to what they should be doing and how to optimize. That's pretty cool. So, so this is really interesting. And the idea of using multiple different kinds of technology and stringing them together is a very important idea.
Yes, I am with you for sure, and Kevin agrees as well. So as I was reading this article, I was thinking SAP should certainly pay attention. This is SAP in the age of AI. And it will have to happen that we will leverage the cross relationships between functions and knowledge, put it in semantics graphs for the ease and also efficiency of using the knowledge for the outside purposes. So this is, for me, it's a certainly big step in the right direction. It's a research paper, But I almost like was thinking on the border with essential for the leaders to realize that currently they're working on the sales or agents for the customer service, right? But at some point, it will all have to come together behind the scenes, and that's why I thought this is a very important point to mark. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with this being important. I had it originally as optional. There's it's interesting you mentioned SAP. There's when you think about organizations for a minute, and there's a fantastic book from I think it's 1968 called Organizations in Action by a guy named Thompson. And what he talks about is, he says, why do people join organizations? They join organizations to decrease uncertainty. He says, where does uncertainty come from? It comes from interdependence. And he lays out 3 kinds of interdependence: sequential, A to B to C to D to E; reciprocal, A to B, B to A to C, C to A; and then pooled, everybody on the same page at the same time. SAP, I think, generally has a control logic that's sequential. This is an emergent control logic that's more reciprocal and pooled. And that's, I think, been where a lot of the existing automation systems have broken their pick, because many software programmers basically think sequentially. And that's why when you say, Tim, to go back to the directed graphs, acyclic graphs, that was, I think, a technique to help deal with the reciprocal and pooled nature and emergent semantics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah, absolutely.
you see a lot of it happening here. So I think it's a very important, if you think of it as a semantic architecture that can deal with different kinds of interdependencies that lead to uncertainty, I think a very big step forward. And Kevin, I just want to highlight what Kevin Petrie said, because, Kevin's deep into the BI world, and, as he sees this, chasing, the BI is chasing this kind of integration, and that AI's orchestration. I think that's a big thing. Anyway, I think this is an important domain and an interesting contribution.
Yeah. And a couple of simple things that can be picked up out of this, like, by the way, you can have LLMs read all the scripts you've ever run, which have a lot of semantic information in them about the tables and the visualizations that you do, just what they did. That's a very clever idea. It's not, it's not breakthrough quantum physics, but it's a very clever idea that probably every organization should write down and say, okay, I'm going to get somebody to write an LLM to run through every script I've ever had written at this firm, and create a knowledge base out of it.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to adopt this framework necessarily, but just the message that this is going and will have to go this route is very important. Okay, important it is. Let's proceed.
And I'm also just going to drop the, you can get a free look at that book I mentioned. There's the PDFs available for free. I just dropped it in the chat.
Okay.
Awesome.
One quick thing, Luda, if I may.
Please.
John, Mike Davis and I are still here to invite or reinvent. We had dinner last night with Sanjeev Moav, who's a ex-Gartner analyst and independent now, and real good friend of the firm. And I didn't realize a real big listener to our show. And Adam, he loves our show. His number one request, he goes, I would just love to be able to get the articles just slightly ahead of you guys. You guys jump right into this stuff. And I think this is a good article that highlights that. The other thing on this one is, John, you and I were at, I don't know, maybe we should say, a large company. I mean, they have 55 business analysts that do stuff like this all the time here. So some of the efficiencies, Tim, that this can pull out of it is really amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Important for now because it's a research article. Okay, important. Let's go next.
Can we just answer Michael? Excuse me, Akash, just before he had, Michael Novak asked, does the article mention provenance or life cycle? I don't think it does. Anyway, not sure.
Nope, it doesn't.
Okay. No, it doesn't.
All righty. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, Akash.
Yep. So the next one.
No worries, John. Yeah. So the next one comes from MIT, and it talks about a new way to create realistic 3D shapes using GenAI.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you think about this, John?
I was going to give this an optional, but I think it's really interesting. And this is an algorithmic innovation, right? Where they basically figured a new way to manage the reintroduction of noise, which is an important part in building the 3D from the 2D model. And you know, their method is much more accurate than the random addition of noise. So it seems like they're doing post-processing. They don't have to retrain the model, but the computational efficiency of putting the noise back in an efficient manner has led to way better quality and way less compute time. So I put it as optional, but this general area of algorithmic innovation, I think, is not getting enough attention because if you look back, the transformer model, what was it, 2017? I mean, that was an algorithmic innovation that unlocked this whole domain. And so, and we have our friends over at Liquid AI that are, you know, doing a different approach to training models, radically different. I think all AI leaders should be keeping an eye on algorithmic innovation because you could change the needed compute by orders of magnitude if you get the right algorithm.
Yeah. Okay, but optional at the moment.
Yes.
What do you think, Adam, on this one?
Yeah, I'd probably say optional as well. It's too much on the research edge of things and wouldn't really influence decision making in the near term.
Yeah, it's almost like a feature at the moment. Okay,
Mhm.
optional.
It's an interesting one comment I would make though is
Yes.
this just, you know, totally for me at least reinforces my belief about the state of the market and the way it develops, especially when research is done by commercial organizations. Effectively, what they did was fix a bug.
Yeah.
And so, you know, one minor bug fix and you get this enormous difference. And you could say the same thing about the transformer. Effectively,
Yeah.
they found one way to quickly make parallel what had been a sequential process and made an enormous difference. So I think it's going to keep happening, stuff like this. I agree it's optional, but it's just keep in mind that these radical changes are going to happen all the time because we're in the commercial Silicon Valley mindset of if it works once, ship it.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. That's a very interesting angle to this. Yeah. With today, that's true. A lot of innovation with 3D image, video, and like. Yes. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, optional it is. Let's go forward.
The next one comes from Microsoft and it talks about Mars, which is their unified financial market simulation engine.
Just before we get into it, can I just say this couldn't possibly have been written by a robot because it's written so badly. Anyway.
Well, thank you. It's a preview in John's.
Adam,
book.
that's so good. Our snark quote was low this week, and John's bringing us up here.
What do you think about this, Paul, after this wonderful introduction?
Yeah, I don't. I should apologize, Lou. I didn't read this one.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
let me do it. So it comes from Microsoft, right? And what they've done is married an LLM with financial data and put together essentially another model that has the trade data, and it can reason, reduce risk, do predictions. So it's a model for financial markets. And I was thinking it's optional because it's still in the research space, but this is what would happen, and we talked about it, in verticalization of domains when you start putting the foundation models with this knowledge that would perform much better than the general foundation models. So I'm optional, maybe convinced into important. What do you guys think? Despite how it's written, John,
Yeah,
the content is good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting but optional. I mean, if you're a hedge fund, an algorithmic hedge fund, especially, this is probably essential.
Mhm.
And that they're already downloading or getting whatever they can out of it. but optional for the rest of us. The reality is simulations like this could be helpful, and maybe financial researchers, your friends, John, over at Harvard or whatever, because simulations like this are helpful. But the reality is it's sort of like the weather. So they've improved the simulation on the 1 to 20-second level. And if you're a high-speed trader, that's trillions of dollars. Okay, so these guys are just going to make so much cash if this works. And they're always trying stuff like this. So even a marginal gain puts a lot of money in their pockets. But effectively what they're doing is just market making. They're making the market slightly more efficient through very short periods of time, like seconds. Yeah. It doesn't help at all to spot hurricanes, which is what you really kind of need help with if you want to talk about financial markets and things like that. So it's interesting, but not all that interesting unless you're just trying to pocket some extra change.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I thought was unfortunate is they didn't give any of the contextual variables around order flow, any of the operational variables, right? A lot of the value on those graphs has to do with the details of how the information spreads and the market clears. Right. And of course there's very little, there's no attempt to translate accuracy into potential value. So that's really
interesting. I'm waiting for, because this is okay, let's figure out protein folding at the quantum mechanical level by starting with the subatomic particles, which nobody ever got very far on because it's so complicated. I'm waiting for somebody to do AlphaFold, which is, we're just going to watch what actually happens at the macro level and not worry about how it gets there.
Yeah, I wrote a case on a company back in the 1990s called Optimark that was trying to basically create a market structure that helped large block trades trade more efficiently. And it kind of rhymed with some of the things that they're doing in here. Anyway.
Okay, optional it is. All right, let's proceed. Ankash?
Yes, Luda. So the next one is a case study which comes from DoorDash, and it talks about their path to high quality LLM-based dasher support automation.
Yeah, that's mine. I put it as important. I almost have, I'm tempted to put a lot of use cases that have depth as important. So DoorDash experimented with LLM and RAGs to help their delivery guys. When they have a question, they had an automated system that was rule-driven and actually didn't provide enough insight and quickly insight for them to really react. And so they've started putting together RAG, and it didn't quite work for them. And they discovered 5 issues with it and worked at them. And the article goes through what they did and how they did it with really great results. They went to 90-some% resolution in most of the cases, which is incredible. So for that reason, I thought I wanted to mark it as important. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought this was a really nice use case. It also demonstrates how quickly we're being expected to just create more complex architectures to solve the more complex problems. So at one level, this is the classic customer support case, but the customers here have much more complex problems than somebody looking on a website for an answer, because they're driving around and they're picking up stuff and delivering stuff. Just the array of challenges they face is much larger. There's many, many more language issues because you have a lot of people speaking different native languages doing this work. So they just have a lot of challenges, and they just, it's a very practical implementation that has to take into account the real world. They can't spend too much time fixing things that are broken in the RAG, because otherwise it gets too slow, but they have to fix it enough to make it worthwhile. So it's a very good read, I think. I think it's important.
Okay, important. What do you think, John? John, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, I'm okay with important on this. Decent case and so forth. Makes
Okay.
sense. The also for folks who wanted the Optimar case I mentioned, it's in the chat as well, and I'm going to also throw an article up there that I wrote about how do you trade in virtual markets, which basically is the idea of expanding the bandwidth of desire. So anyway.
Let's maybe before we go to the next article, we have a couple of minutes. Adam, do you want to introduce your page where the articles will be on GAI
Yeah, I've
Insights?
asked it. Can one of the admins post it to the chat? I'm not sure if when I post to the chat, it's seen on all the platforms. No one's reacting to my comments. I've posted the URL on there. It's gaiinsights.com/articles. And yeah, if you bring that up, it'll have the list of the articles that we're discussing right now on there.
Yep. Yeah. And one more comment on the Dasher thing. Again, what we're seeing here, as well as we've seen a couple of other times today, it's not just LLMs. They're using various techniques in combination to get higher quality results. And I think that's going to become expected very quickly.
Okay. Yeah, and I will mention it. We'll mention it in the newsletter that there is.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
There is this articles. There's this page where the articles are for today's briefing. So thanks, Adam, for doing this. This is cool. Okay. Important it is for the. And Liz agrees. So we put it as important. Okay, next one. Ankash, please.
Question that we have for today comes from the New York Times, and it talks about the furious contest to unseat NVIDIA as king of AI chips.
Yeah, Tim, you're passionate about this. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll just repeat what I've said a million times. Shortages almost always lead to gluts. Now, the other corollary to that is a famous John Maynard Keynes slogan that says, markets can remain irrelevant longer than most investors can remain solvent. So if you think about the PC, it was sort of in shortage for 20 years, okay? But eventually there was a glut, and that glut really crashed the PC market, but it took 20 years, okay? So the only question here is it going to be a couple of years or is it going to be 20 years based on the demand? And right now the demand is so overwhelming, nobody can see the other side of it. And, but, this article indicates just how aggressive the players are. We can already count 6 or 7 players, including the huge players like Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, that are investing billions and billions of dollars every year. They can build fabs all the time. So they can really put a lot of money into this stuff. And we'll see where it goes. So, NVIDIA has all sorts of plans to try and not make this happen, including just making their chips faster, going vertical. Unclear how long it will take. Yep. But at some point, there'll be a glut. But I'm not saying it's this year or next year, but this is an indication that there's going to be a lot of these AI chips around a few years from now. And the question is, will the demand continue to outstrip it? And I can't offer anything on that because it is so high right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But optional, right, Tim? You're thinking optional?
Yeah. So what's your rating?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think it's optional. Yeah,
I'd give it optional.
It's optional.
All right, optional it is.
It's important to remember that John Maynard Keynes was a fantastic investor, and he didn't cause any really stupid things like Bob Merton and Myron Black.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. People forget that Keynes was really good, very practical at the end of the day, and
right.
made
way more money than these friggin' monetarists who are idiotic about it. Anyway.
Yep.
Okay, so let's bring our scorecard, and as we're doing that, any announcements, any insights from being at the reInvent, Paul?
My mute. No, I think I need to still summarize this thing. I mean, it is breathtaking the scale and scope of the AWS investments or announcements this week. I think it really highlights the absolute massive game on that we saw from Microsoft last week at their show. AWS is just going all in on every single area. And I think it's going to be a real interesting thing on what the world looks like 5 to 6 years from now, particularly in the world. And Tim, you and John talked a lot about it, where distribution counts. So will we see a world 5 to 6 years from now where the major market share will be proprietary models and open source models, really supported by AWS and Microsoft, who have the cloud distribution, and players like OpenAI really start losing a lot more share because of these. But that's one. Second is tons of two dozen conversations Mike and I have, and major takeaways there are premise or solutions that's inside your firewall is remains just really a driver and important to large companies. So this whole idea where there's a hybrid where companies are going to be doing a lot of stuff behind the firewall and stuff on the public LLMs is the second major theme.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks, Paul.
I was at VentureBeat last night, and same message. eBay, head AI person at eBay, the CIO at Goldman Sachs, massive deployment, no question about the productivity, and also no question that they have to go hybrid, both for security, control, and for cost.
Okay, thanks, Paul and John.
Quick announcement, Luda. We have 2 new episodes up on the Learning Lab on the GAI Insights YouTube. We have 5 minutes with Dr. John from Monday evening, where he does an overview of the corporate buyer's guide for enterprise intelligence applications we've recently launched, as well as the showcase from Alex Velinov over at Tag Digital, looking at Notebook LM and practical use cases for business. So all the previous Learning Labs, as well as all of these live streams, are on our YouTube, which Wonderful. Is at GAI Insights on YouTube.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so let's wrap up today. We have 3 importance and 3 optionals. Great discussion, as always. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.